How's it going, people? Salmon Slapper here, and this is episode 6 of Runescape lore, and today we'll be covering the 4th age. So we've covered the vast majority of the 3rd, let's get into the 4th then. So what is the 4th age then? Well, the 4th age, also known as the Age of Reconstruction, was when the surviving races from the massive gielinorian god wars of the 3rd age began to rebuild and flourish amongst the world. Heroes from this age include people such as Arav and Kamora, both of whom actually have a statue dedicated to them within the Heroes Guild. So let's start off with some of the main races that existed during this time. Well, one of the major races are humans. Aside from a few settlements in the Caridian Desert and the refugee town of Berderot, although Mayaditch, being the largest city with human population at the time, was already ruled by vampires at this point, most humans in the beginning of the 4th age had abandoned civilization due to the destroyed settlements and lived in barbaric tribes. The major exception to this rule was the city of Saranthium, but this city was eventually wiped out. As the age progressed, they started to build new and permanent settlements, some of which turned into mighty cities by the late 4th age, thus allowing humans to become the dominant race in Gielinor. Humans also attempted to recolonize the wilderness, although these attempts weren't actually successful. Humans would not have become dominant, however, if it were not for the discovery of the all-important rune essence. Another race that was widely known at this time were Gnomes. Gnomes returned to the surface right after the end of the God Wars, where they found their settlements completely annihilated. Between the 3rd and 5th centuries of the 4th age, Gnomes were forced to hide from barbaric human tribes, narrowly avoiding extinction. Shortly after that, though, the Grand Tree was planted, and the Gnome civilization and technology began to thrive. Dwarfs were another race similar to the Gnomes, as they also remained under the surface, except the dwarfs didn't appear until much later. So while the dwarfs remained under the surface during the 4th age, during that time they discovered a huge cavern where they built their mighty city Keldagrim. After the city's foundation, most of their magical powers were somehow lost, allowing them to only cast spells such as Superheat. During the rule of King Elves, the Consortium, which quickly became a ruling organization within Keldagrim, was founded. By roughly the year 1650, after King Elves' death, the Consortium ruled the Dwarven realm entirely. Due to their lack of magical abilities, the technology of dwarves, however, had become very advanced by that time, and by the end of the 4th age, or towards the beginning of the 5th age, they started to make first contacts with the surface once again after thousands of years. Contrary to this, though, are the Imkando dwarves, which actually emerged a lot earlier and retained at least some contact with the surface world during the 4th age. However, unfortunately because of this, all but 2 Imkando dwarfs were utterly slaughtered by barbarians, Thurgo being the most commonly known of the 2. Elves were also around at this time, although the elves did not remain enclosed within Taranan during the 4th age. In the early 4th age, they ruled large areas of modern-day Kandarin for at least part of the age, upon which they taught humans and actually lived quite peacefully. This continued all the way up until the Ioearth Khan, who worshipped Zamorak, took over Privithinus during the Battle of Privithinus. Rebel clans were forced to stay in Azaftar, a forest just to the south of Privithinus. Another major race that took large roles during this time were the Goblinkind. When the 4th age began, many of the Goblin tribes fought against the other races for resources. In the early 4th age, Goblins battled ogres, whom they'd lived with peacefully for ages upon Feldup Hills. They were eventually forced to move northward to the Kandarin areas, simply due to the mighty strength of the ogres. It was there that they came in contact with gnomes, leading to skirmishes between the two. Due to illusion spells used by the gnomes though, goblins stopped attacking the gnomes, and eventually just started trying to settle down wherever they could. By the midpoint of the 4th Age, goblins were losing the competition for resources and started a fight amongst themselves. This culminated in the massive battle of the Plain of Mud. Throughout the 4th Age, the majority of goblins became weaker and even less intelligent, until they became only a minor threat to other races. Although, possibly because of this, they still started to spread over to other areas such as Asgardia and Misthalin. Eventually, towards the end of the 4th Age, some of the goblin tribes started to build small permanent settlements, the most well known of which is the Goblin Village, just north of Falador. There are another kind of goblin though, the cave goblins, which during the 3rd Age hid underground to avoid utter slaughter through Bannis's orders. These goblins are commonly known as cave goblins. Cut off from other civilizations with no major conflict, their main city, Dorgesh Khan, prospered while their knowledge of magic and technology even grew. At some point though, during the early 19th century of the 4th Age, they made contact with Juna and light creatures, although it wasn't all peaceful for the Dorgesh Khan. Another civilization that was known to have been founded during this time is the Tazar themselves. Living an isolated life since the 1st Age, they make the first documented contact with the surface people. The Tazar civilization actually considered humans as pets during this time. And the only other major race that is really important during this time are the Vampirekind. Under the iron rule of Lord Dragon, the vampires took all of Mauritania and enslaved the population. The lands to the east of what was once known as Hallowvale became known as the Sanguinesti region, and this is believed to be where the vampire populace lives. The vampires have less power the further they stray away from this region though, so outlying settlements are generally ruined and downtrodden. Those living north of the Mortmire Swamp are relatively free to manage their own affairs though. However, those in the Sanguinesti region are treated like cattle and routinely drained of blood. All people in what is now known as Mauritania pay blood tithes to the vampires. Eventually, Lord Dragon felt strong enough to attack the Misthalin, but he was eventually defeated and the River Selve was blessed against him. By the late 4th Age, Mauritania was little more than a legend, and people began to settle in the north. Later though, these settlers were all enslaved by the vampires. So, now you know about the major races that played roles during this time, let's get into some specifics of what actually happened during the 4th Age. To be honest, there's actually quite a lot that happened during this time, and it's kind of hard to sum up, but here we go. So, starting from the very beginning of the 4th Age. So, sometime near the very start, gnomes returned to the surface after hiding underground during the God Wars, although the dwarves were unaware of the end of the God Wars until millennia later. Between the years 1 and 100, most likely around the year 30, Robert the Strong drives a brand new threat, the Dragonkin, into hiding. Right after the beginning of the 4th Age, the Fist of Guthix was also supposedly created. In the year 1 to 200, the Druids, worshippers of Guthix, built stone circles to worship Guthix during this time, and they're known to have been found scattered across the land. In the year 31 to 60, the first star chart that is not destroyed was made in this time period, believed to have been made by the great astronomer Scorpius. In the year 169, the 14th Ritual of Rejuvenation takes place. In the year 200 to 500, barbaric humans hunted the gnomes to near extinction, causing them to retreat into hidden settlements and conclaves. Between the year 600 and 900, the first permanent settlements were built at Intrana, Falador, and across the vast majority of Karamja. In the year 669, the 15th Ritual of Rejuvenation takes place. This time, the Majram Mizarg was chosen to be sacrificed. In the year 700, Avaroka, later known as Varrock, was built. Varrock is the oldest surviving human settlement outside the Caridian Desert in Gielinor today. It was founded when a tribe found a baby abandoned, and they also took it as a good omen that this would be a good place to set up sit. The baby, though, eventually come to be known as Arav, the famous Varrockian hero. In the year 750 to 850, the people of Avaroka became immensely powerful and conquered their neighbouring tribes, eventually forming the very first human nation, Misthalin. Misthalin in the mid-4th Age, however, was little more than a rough conglomeration of tribes, all of whom paid homage to Avaroka. It's not really what you'd call a nation by modern standards, but during the time was the largest conglomerate of people during the area and time. During the years 800 and 1000, the Kingdom of Asgarnia was founded in this time. Between 900 and 1000, the government of Avaroka changed to a monarchy during this period, but the precise date is unknown. It may have been the creation of the monarch when the city was renamed Varrock, but it could have also been at the start of the 5th Age, or the official founding of Misthalin. And, simultaneously at the same time during this period, the dwarves finally discovered that the God Wars have ended and slowly begin to resurface. Soon after, a large human settlements were able to defend themselves. The Battle of the Plain of Mud also takes place between the Goblin tribes, and the Goblins almost drive themselves to extinction. It is believed that this took place in the middle of the age, approximately between year 869 and 1269. The battle, however, is stopped indirectly by the god Bandos, possibly so Bandos can keep a foothold within Gielinor. In the year 1169, the 16th Ritual of Rejuvenation takes place. This time, the Marjora Lamistad is sacrificed. Between the year 1100 and 1200, many dark and evil creatures from Mauritania launch an assault upon Misthalin, especially Avaroka. In response to this, 7 priestly warriors defeated them and blessed the River Selve, making it impassable to creatures of Zamorak. In the year 1225, Bilrak the Marjora, along with his followers, begin their descent within Daemonheim. In the years 1500 to 1700, Old Asgarnia was presumably destroyed during this time, and Falador was also laid to ruin. It is unknown exactly how this actually happened, but as records show, Falador was founded in the year 7 of the 5th Age, while also stating that it also existed during the mid-4th Age. Historians have deduced that the city was destroyed in approximately this time period. However, whoever caused this destruction is still unknown today. In the year 1650, after the death of King Alvus, the consortium of the dwarves takes over Keldagrim. During the next few hundred years, the dwarves become immensely prosperous, as well as incredibly technologically advanced. The consortium's leadership enables the development of steam-powered engines, as well as advancing methods of smelting ore, in turn allowing the dwarves to create boats and trains. In the year 1669, the Marjora gather for the 17th Ritual of Rejuvenation near Gorak Castle. Ralvash is sacrificed. In the year 1769, the Bond Farm Massacre occurs. In 1777, settlers came up the River Selve looking for places to settle, heedless of the warnings they received at Patadermus, and, unfortunately, they eventually settled within Mauritania. And in turn, they ended up building Canifis, Port Phasmatis, and Frankenstein's castle. They all, however, eventually come under the dominion of the vampires. Port Phasmatis was eventually freed though, but the inhabitants were betrayed by their saviour Necrovarus and were enslaved as ghosts. In the year 1800 to 1850, the Gnomes eventually re-established contact with the now more civilized humans. In 1824 to 1837, an unknown party conducts experiments with portals while inside Daemonheim, possibly the Majra, upon which they summon many new creatures to the realm of Gielinor. In 1930, elves in modern-day Kandarin found the Arandar mountain pass, abandoned and inaccessible. They sent 5 scouts under the mountains, of which the only one to return was Ada, who brought tales of the Iorwerth clan's rebellion. King Baxtorian ordered the elves to return to Tiranan to retake Privthinus. They failed, however, and King Baxtorian returned to his kingdom in ruins, and his wife dead. It is said that he was so immensely burdened by this, that he decided to bury himself under a waterfall. In 1937, the town of Lumbridge was founded within Mistalin. The first Duke of Lumbridge is believed to have been named Polonius, and the town was commissioned by King Claudius, and at the same time, Al-Kharid was also built soon after. But Al-Kharid was independent from Mistalin, however. In 1967, the town of Ardougne sends forth an army to fight a battle against a group of Zamorakians living in an outpost to the northwest. Very heavy casualties ensue, and after the battle, a truce is agreed. One survivor goes on to become the first king of the Ardignus line. Some say he officially founded Kandarin. At the same time, the other survivors of this battle were said to have found the Ardougne marketplace and set up residence around the area. In the year 2000, the discovery of rune essence leads to the utter dominance of humankind across the face of Gielinor. Now, there are a few more events that happened during the 4th Age, although some of these are major conflicts, and a lot of them we don't actually know the official dates for. So here goes a small list of them. The city of Avarocca was known to have launched a crusade to a Zamorakian temple in the desert. Records, however, have been lost, so the reason for it, and when it actually happened, is actually unknown. Avarocca was also renamed Varrock, presumably to celebrate a historic event. Whether or not this was the coming of the 5th Age, or when they decided to switch to a monarchy, is still unknown. In the early part of the age, the Elven King Baxtorian, leader of the Kadan clan, the most military-esque of the Elven clans, led settlers over the Arandar mountains. At the mid-part of the age, the dragon Garak, who had destroyed many villages near the wilderness, was slain by the heroine Camora. Morden, within Mauritania, is affected by the haze originating from Castle Draken, turning its inhabitants into afflicted and disturbed shades within the catacombs. This, according to the diary of Herbiflax, happened when Avarocca had been renamed Varrock. The Zamorakian Order of Black Knights is established in northern Asgarnia, leading to constant conflict with the White Knights, which eventually leads to the political overthrow and exile from Asgarnia. This action, however, later led to them declaring themselves at war with the White Knights in the 5th Age. So that is pretty much all the major events that happened during the 4th Age. During this time, most of the races actually started to build up their foundations once again, as prior to the Gielinorian God Wars there were major settlements across the lands of Gielinor. However, during the Gielinorian God Wars, everything was annihilated, and everyone, and from all races, no longer had a home as such, and preferred to walk around as roving bands. So the 4th Age allowed the reconstruction of many races, and put new powers in place. With the gods gone, it was now up to mortals to decide the fate of Gielinor. Although wars did still rage across the land, they were nothing like the Gielinorian God Wars, especially with the Edicts of Guthix in place. So that was episode 6, the 4th Age. That gives you a nice little overview of everything that happened during the time. Hope you all enjoyed. So, next episode RSLore, no idea what it could be, so many choices, no idea where to start. So either way, look forward to it, it'll probably be up next Wednesday. So, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed, give it a like if you did, happy days, and I will catch you all later, have a good one.